Hey, nice and warm. Morning. I'll just give it a moment for folks to join the stream. In fact, I might do some creative artwork. This is a very, I've got Andrea with me and Pebbles.
Morning.
No one's here yet, so that's not true. A couple of people have joined the stream. But I'll give it a minute. Good morning, friends. Where's that blue pen of Alexander's? Is it here?
Yeah, it should be down in the box.
I've got the calculator.
Can't say we haven't got high-tech
it's Andrea.
equipment.
It's Andrea's joined a blackbird that is white. 7777. Thank you so much. Really massive contribution. And someone said something to us a little while ago, which has given us quite a lot of. It's just that we are doing. It sounds a little bit kind of. I don't like saying it quite like this, but it was nice to have someone else say it, that we're doing God's work and that we will get what we need as and when we need it, So I try and have faith that I'm building this faith that I need not worry, even though I don't have the things that I think I need. See, maybe.
So we were saying that last night, weren't we? That when you go through a period of...
Andrea? It's Andrea.
Morning. When you go through a period of kind of not having all the stuff that we think we need, you detach from that materialism. It doesn't mean that we don't want comfort, and it gives you a chance to prioritize, but to kind of decide what that is. It's too bright.
Yeah, we need to move position.
That's what our studio.
Yeah, we haven't set up the studio yet. Do you think we could sort us out with the studio? God. Actually, Plain Permaculture was saying he wanted to do a stream with us and a pal of his. So in due course, he's asked Karen if she would host it. Sun and Moon Karen, not Karen B. Karen P. If she would host it. So we'll see if that comes off. But in time, we will host people on our own streams. Because, it just seems like a natural progression. Let me just turn you around here and show you the fire again. Oh, that's my finger, not the fire. Nice and warm in here.
It is. The weather's rather chilly in the UK, I think, not just up where we are, but in the UK today. So
nice of you to stay up there, Ricardo, and lovely to have you. It's not that early here. I let my coffee go cold, honey. It's not that early. There's three things that am I going to talk about anything this morning? And a couple of things have come up. Firstly, I've been talking about this 8 inches per mile squared, and people are going to say, some people will say, you don't understand the maths. And I think it's this understanding thing that has caused us so many difficulties over the last few years, that we stand under a certain formula, and that formula is numbers and letters and so on, and you've got to apply pi, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that, and if you don't do that, then it's this. But I got a pretty simple way of looking at things, and it struck me that if we live on a spherical object, and I don't want to get into the oblateness, the pear-like shape of this balloon particularly, to keep it simple and just to make the point, I think that if you just work on the basis of it being a ball at this point in time, because any oblateness would mean that there are some areas that are less steep and other areas that are more steep, and so that's just a bit of a complication that that serves as a bit of a straw man to say, oh well, it's not just that, it's because it's oblate, you can't just say that. Well, if it was a perfect sphere, a marble, then you could say, all right, it's a certain amount of curvature. If it was oblate, then you could say, yes, in some areas there's more and in some areas there's less. But if we just work on a mean or an average of a 24,000 mile, 25,000 mile ball with a 4,000 mile radius, for now, we can refine that. If these thinkings have any merit, then we can refine it further. What happened to that little pen? The blue pen that I had.
I don't know, my love. You sat down with it.
Did I? Oh, there it is. Sorry, guys. This is obviously high production value here. Would you hold the camera a moment?
Sure.
Oh, can you see what you?
What am I?
Just me. Is fine.
Just you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, this is my globe. This is my 0 point here at the top. This is let's just choose this as North Pole. You can go a little further away and then you can see what you're looking at. Yeah. No, you can see what you.
I don't.
No, but like that. So this is the North Pole, or the 0. This is the equator. Yeah.
Very accurate.
Yeah.
Mathematically accurate.
Yeah. This distance here. I'll get this right so that those that don't want to think beyond. Yeah. There. That's Alexander.
Yep. You're gonna have to take the camera.
Zizi's woken up already. Hey. The camera is a geosynchronous satellite. Yeah. Hello, breaking the fiction addiction. 7.98 inches if they want to get technical. Okay. So look. Good day. You've been chatting with many good people. Okay. Look. Let's take our geosynchronous. It's my favorite truck driver. Okay, so 24,900 miles divided by 4 is 6,225 miles. So sorry for my camera business here, but I was hoping to have a camera operator. The distance from here to here, 6,225 miles. Morning is easy. Hey, daddy's boy. So the distance here is 6,225 miles. I think this comes out in backwards for some reason in the camera. I can't. I'm sorry about that. this is maybe a presentation I need to do at a different time. But tell me if I'm wrong, that if I was to move from here to the equator, 6,225 miles away, I would descend 4,000 miles. We know that because the radius, in other words, the distance down through to this point is 4,000 miles. So as well as traveling over the skin of the earth, 6,000 miles, I need to go down, I need to descend. My plane, my ship, whatever, needs to descend 4,000 miles. And quite simply put, guys, if you travel this distance along and 4,000 miles down, it's a very simple formula to say 4,000 miles divided by the 6,225 gives you 6.6 of a mile. 0.64 miles. In other words, for every mile I travel out, I have to travel down. I look tired. I have to travel down about a kilometer. Which, the reason why I think it's important is because perhaps the 8 inches has been given to us as a way of minimizing the reality being that actually if it's only 6,000 miles to the equator from the North Pole, but it's 4,000 miles of descent, then the amount of descent, not only should it be an equal amount for every step you take, it's not an exaggerating, I think it was a Bob question. Someone said yesterday, in a comment, that I hadn't quite understood something, and it has to be exponentially getting steeper. Well, it's a perfect sphere in this example, and for every step forward, I have to keep stepping a little bit down each step. It doesn't become steeper because in my example that I used yesterday, the 99th mile to the 100th mile, that 1 mile, the craft would have to descend 130 feet, which doesn't make any sense to me anymore. It doesn't make sense that actually the nose of the plane, we always choose the plane, the nose of the plane when it's near me is only going to drop down 8 inches in the first mile, but in the 99th mile it's going to drop down 130 feet. And if you take that and exaggerate it up to the 1,000th mile, the 999th mile to the 1,000th mile, I'm pretty sure it's going to be like well over a mile of curve in that single mile. And that's not reality either. That's falling off a cliff. That's descending more down than you are going out. And I think it should be always the same amount of down per step out. Okay, that's the first thing to get off my chest. I'm going to do a more succinct video on that, and I am going to take some feedback. Nicholas said had been starting over in Glastonbury. It said he was starting to have similar thoughts. Speaking of Glastonbury, Street Truth bunged us some 20 quid last night, so thank you very much for that, very much. So a guy by the name of Mike M wrote to me in my comment section. You can check it out, yesterday's video, I think, on how he'd seen yesterday or last night or this morning, he'd seen some craft overhead. He loves filming at night, or filming luminaries and stuff, and he said that some craft came overhead, and it was then followed up by a lot of helicopters and other planes. these were what you would typically call like a UFO type thing, right? And I went through, like probably most folks, I went through a phase of, before I found flat Earth, I went through a phase of starting to think that the UFO stories might be true. I even said the other day that, Buzz Aldrin had said that when they were on the moon, during the moon landings, they were being watched by aliens on the on the hilltop. Now we know that those those aliens were actually just camera crew and Stanley Kubrick's films crew and stuff like that. But standing off set, but I did for a moment believe him, and even the guy, the Learjet guy. Did you any of you see his videos, his interviews, where the son of the inventor of the Learjet, I forget his name now, but he was talking about alien craft and stuff. And then I threw all of that out. When I found the flat Earth, I threw all of that stuff out. But latterly, I've been thinking a little bit about, particularly because where we are at the moment is quite close to an American Air Force base. An American Air Force base, here in Little England, in the middle of Norfolk. And I'd started to wonder what it is, given that none of the the justifications for wars and for military armament and so on ring true for me anymore. I started to wonder what it really is that we're up to, and why we're spending all of this money on military technology and so on when we're just making these enemies up for ourselves. And I have been thinking that it's possible that this technology is being used or developed to some end that has to do with an opening of portals, a little bit like the Martin Kenny type theories, where a melting or an opening of certain gates at a particular time allows for the free movement of people and technology from higher or lower kind of realms, places.
That would include aliens in the sense of people from other lands.
Yeah, aliens from other lands. And I feel a bit weird at the moment. I had some apple cider vinegar just now, and it's made my stomach feel a bit weird. Yeah, so I started to wonder about that, and why it is that you would have. And the guy who runs this place actually was in the Air Force. The as a career soldier, he was in the Air Force, and he was talking the other day about this gargantuan, hundreds of square miles air base that the British maintain in Canada. Aside from saying how it was just hundreds of square miles of flatness, which made me immediately think of, is this one of those areas that has been affected by a mud flood, and what's left is just that kind of those flat areas that you would expect to get if an area was once under the sea or under some kind of mud flood event. Because by the way, I think a lot of deserts might be the same. So I'd started to wonder whether they maintain these military bases in other countries because it gives a certain deniability. It protects the local people, or not protects, but it prevents the locals from perhaps finding out stuff, because they can, under the guise of military secrecy, and the Americans here are doing their own thing, and we don't interfere with them, and we don't and then of course there's that story of Rendlesham Forest where it was American soldiers who were said to have discovered that UFO here in the UK. So do they maintain these bases in other countries so that they can carry on certain types of protection work or preventative work against UFOs, against alien craft that come in from other parts of the plane? So I wondered about that, and Mike M's comments about seeing something had sparked that in me and made me think, yes, I wonder if that's true.
Like
I wonder if that's something that's...
It's like a triangle. It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Very clever.
So I wonder if that's something that
Yeah.
It's got this.
deep behind enemy lines.
That's right.
Yeah.
There and there and
Hi, Gracie. I hope you're well, and I hope that landlord situation resolves for you, or your next steps going forward come for you. So yeah, I wonder about that. And then Andrea came up with this idea to do with a plasma event that I think is fascinating, and that is that...
Just before you say that, these are the kind of conversations that Dave and I have with each other, which are incredibly stimulating and interesting. Some might say a little crazy, but yeah, this was one this morning. He's our little Zizi. Good morning. Good morning.
Hello,
Good morning.
hello, baby boy. So yeah, we were wondering, like Andrea was thinking about how when you
Some baby.
Andrea was wondering about how blood when you draw blood and let it stand, how the heavy blood separates from the plasma. And so we were chewing over whether the plasma event might be... Let me go the other way on this. Imagine if, when we talk about light workers and having a light body and a light soul, meant that you were able to float like the plasma in your blood, and that if you were a heavy body with a heavy soul, with a heavy diet and lifestyle, that you would sink under the weight, under the plasma event.
Well, and isn't your blood, I mean, our bodies are electrical beings, right? But your blood is, in particular,
Electrical,
leading obviously to your heart, which is like a pump. And if you have a heart attack, they have to put some more electricity into it. And so the blood obviously being an important element to our meat suit. But yeah, that if the plasma part floats to the top, and the other blood matter sinks to the bottom. It's the heavier.
Yeah.
And when it comes to vibration,
Yeah.
In a material sense, it's
the hijacks. In funny little aside, if you haven't listened to all my stuff from a year ago, then you won't have heard me say this before, but I was gardening for a lady by the name of Anne Brewer, whose husband was killed in a very strange, very unfortunate accident with an off-duty policeman drove into him on the sidewalk. And the funny thing about this guy is that he discovered, he was a highly thought of doctor, and he worked at King's College.
Is in the 80s, isn't it?
In the 80s, he discovered that blood was actually electrical, and he wrote a paper on it. I never got to see the paper from Anne. I unfortunately never got to that point, but it was for me it was curious, because at the time when she told me that, it was like, well, we know that it's all electrical, but the mainstream doesn't want to accept that or acknowledge that it's all an electrical system. So if this guy was writing papers on stuff like that, that was talking out at shop. Was it really an accident that had him knocked down by an off-duty policeman, policeman? Anyway, that's just what I wanted to sort of push out this morning, was that that yes, is a plasma event going to cause what we would consider to be a flooding in our sort of material way of seeing things, that it's like a water, and that whatever comes from above is like a plasma, and that plasma will cause you to either float or to sink, depending on where you are. And so it means that the lightest bodies survive and the heaviest bodies stay well buried beneath what becomes a mud.
Perhaps this is where the story of Noah comes in your arc, is that actually by doing that spiritual growing, and this is where everybody's on their path, and they've got to kind of navigate it for themselves. They've all got to build their own arc. That actually building your arc makes you a lighter being, therefore you will float.
Yeah, that's just a fascinating. It's a fascinating idea, and actually, if you think about the name of the floaty objects that we have in the water, they're called buoys. I know that the spelling is just slightly different, but yeah, I do wonder about that. Whether it's just anyway, we'll talk about that more.
Yeah, it's just something that came to us this morning.
So I thank Mike M for his comment, because it did get me. I was like, I'm not feeling it this morning to go live. But when I read his comment, I was like, yeah, you know what? People do see things in the sky that don't make any sense. I even sometimes wonder whether what is causing some of the chemtrails or some of the objects that we see in the sky are actually, something outside of that, from outside of our own world, or even something that's scratching along the top of because if we have like a roof overhead of us, can you imagine being a prawn or a shrimp sitting on the bottom of the seabed, and the water is say 20 or 30 meters deep, and above you goes a speedboat. You would see the trail of the speedboat. You would see a shadow going through the above you, but it would make no sense or whatever. So I liken some of what goes on in the sky possibly as there's some kind of activity occurring on the layer above us, and in order to justify that, we invented aircraft to look like that, so that when you and I look up into the sky, all we would see was what we thought was an aircraft, but in fact it is something that is cruising along on top of the lid, in the sort of space. That's not the right word to use. In the environment just immediately above our roof. So that's more food for thought. Oh, you saw that too, Jax? Yeah, like another dimension. We should get together sometime, Jax. I know you're in London, I think. Get together for a conversation. Anyway, that's just creative thinking about our world. Um, I don't. When I talk about a plasma event or an apocalypse or a mud flood or whatever, I don't talk about it from a position of fear, and I don't talk about it from a perspective of trying to incite any fear in you. Because we this is a place of love, or we come from a place of love, and wherever when we return to that place of love. So that's nothing to be feared. Um, it does feel to me like we have a purpose here other than simply to sit in front of the TV and watch soap operas and Oscar night and stuff like that, Super Bowls and things. Those are all the distractions. This information that we're trying to unpick, and this way of raising our vibration is, I think, the purpose of this. And it's not like a do or die, and oh my gosh, if you don't, then this and so on. It's not about that. It's all free will, and it's a choice to get involved in it, but not out of fear.
It comes back to that beautiful wooden magnet that you at the first Flat Earth conference came home with. That someone had made, and it was know thyself.
Know thyself.
And I think, once you unpeel some of the layers, the external layers, or the programs or patterns of behavior that sort of control you, then you learn to know thyself, and through that you get to have free will of how you want to. And I'm pretty sure that most people want to go back to that feeling of love. And yesterday we had a comment about veganism. I don't want to get into veganism.
I mentioned the V word.
Yeah, I think
Not vagina.
I think what's for Dave and I, what's more important is that we become more conscious of our actions, and when you become more conscious of your actions, you're doing it from the intention of love, and that's a process. That's a process that happens, and it's different for everyone because we're individuals. Although we know we are connected, energetically connected, whilst we're on this earth plane, we are separate beings walking a path, and hopefully getting to the point where we know ourselves, and through that we can come back and reconnect to a consciousness. Another thing that after we spoke yesterday, I came across a conversation online about consciousness, and it was interesting that when you're in your head, when you're in the mind, you're actually not in consciousness. And so that's why the practice of deep breathing and all that kind of stuff is really important, because it takes us into our consciousness. That's just a little nugget for all of us to remember, that sometimes we need to find that stillness in our thoughts. Hey, Mr. Manuel, he's a deep thinker, but sometimes an overthinker, and so we need to find the stillness in our thoughts so we can connect back to ourselves. Another little thing from yesterday, someone asked, I'd mentioned that I have found this lady who channels the energies, the luminary energies, and I'm quite happy to share. I'll give you her website so that you can go direct to her website. It's earthwalkkv.com. She also goes by the name of Aquarius Nation, because she is helping those who are leading to the age of Aquarius. Interesting place to go and see whether it resonates with you. It resonates with me. It may not with others, but yeah, go and check it out.
Has anyone thought that like Aquarius is the water bearer, and in a flood, you would want the water bearer to bring a bucket of water, right, and pour that down. So some people suggest that we can
our thoughts and our actions, or our thoughts will bring about a shift, a change like that. And others say that the controllers of this world, this realm, can pull the plug when they don't like that we found out too much information.
I think they can get us to pull the plug. I think we are being manipulated through our thoughts, and so our thoughts again will probably be our own demise. But equally, there's so many people who are thinking
But
the lighter thoughts. So is it not again balancing balancing?
Well, I've sometimes surmised that, like what would, other than, if I was some kind of ne'er-do-well and the authorities had some kind of grip on me, why would I do what Tim Peake did, which was to go and lie to school children about space, or what's his name, Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong. What would get me to lie like that? I mean, Aldrin and Armstrong looked very uncomfortable at their press conference, so it wasn't like they were feeling good about it. Tim Peake, on the other hand, he's gleeful. The way he goes around, presenting this deception. So is it simply that these are Satanists, as some say, and they're getting off on it, or is it that they know something that if humanity does wake up to the truth of this place, then there's an auto reset that occurs.
Well, they know that there has to be a balance, so they're doing their bit to keep the balance.
Well, I mean, the system is doing its very, very best to keep people in a state of low vibration, distraction, entertainment. All
But if we go back to the
dark
battery,
things.
is there not a necessity to have the positive, the neutral, and the darkness?
Before the age of the internet, everybody was in the dark. Most people were in the most people, and maybe most people still are, but it just feels to me like
that's not totally true, is it? Because there are those that practice, have a very deep, rich spiritual life. Yes, under the illusion of what's going on around us, but they they are deeply spiritual. So
yeah, but I mean, it's like you can be deeply religious or deeply, or any of these things. But if your religion, just for example, has within it a couple of misspells, things that are sort of keeping you from the truth, that's done on purpose. And I think that all the mystery, all the religions, all the good practices of say meditation or diet or whatever, all of them have got mud in the well, poison in the pot. And this is by intention, this is by design. So to me, this has been an intention of the system to stop us from ever knowing this. And even now, when we feel like we're starting to get towards truths, are we sure that the information we've discovered is not tainted? Just like the 8 inches per mile squared, I'm seriously questioning whether that isn't again one of those bits of information that was seeded to us 100 years ago, whatever, through the Robotham and others, to have us, to keep us in a state of in the dark. So I think that everything the system does is designed to stop us from ever knowing the truth. And so the question is that if when we discover the truth, does that cause a reset? If we...
I don't know. I think it's if you see some of the truths, like you look at some of the events that happen, there are, you could say they were silly mistakes, but are they not there so that certain people will wake up? So maybe there's a shift going on because we are cyclically changing into another age, and these everything is preordained. Everything is meant to unfold like it is. And I remember Martin Kenny said when he was talking about the battery, the light, the neutral, and the dark, that for every light you get, you have to get a dark, so there has to be balance. So as people wake up and are discovering this, then you might very well see the dark, also kind of lifting their game. So, is it all meant? Is this balance that we're seeking here meant? But also there is a shift into a new age, and so things are supposed to. It's almost like we're going to the springtime. So you will see, hopefully a better state, but with that darkness still there because it's a necessity.
Yeah.
Whoa, there's a ball over here.
Yeah, there's a ball over there.
There's a ball over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, this is easy.
Good morning.
You want to see that little boy doing his ABCs? He's just phenomenal writing his ABCs.
It's around here now.
Yeah, the big cage on. And doing bubbles. Yeah, we're gonna go blow some bubbles in a little while.
Buy some.
Yeah.
Bought some bubbles. We did.
Steve's
yes.
wide awake. Hello, Steve.
Blue.
Blue.
Blue, yes.
Steve, I really could do with some colloidal silver, mate. Don't you want to do me up a package, a care package? What is he saying? If you don't, you're lost at sea if you don't know where you are or who you are. Salvage under Admiralty law, we are 70,000, and that is how they justify the control system.
Buy some. Buy some.
It's easy.
You
We
want
bought
some?
some.
We
We
got
bought
some.
some bubbles. Just on the bubbles.
Gracie says hi.
If Jack from the van,
Ever
Jack and
sees this.
Lisa, if you're watching this by any chance, then
Hope you're well.
hi Nick. Then hope you're well. We think about you often. But if you're watching this, we went to the local supermarket, and because that's where we have to get our food from, we came across some of these.
Well, we
packs
wanted to
of-
buy him some bubbles to blow, right?
Yes, but we'd seen them anyway, so there were a whole choice of them. Obviously, they've got
Cars
characters
and
on them.
mermaids and
But when we were in Europe, I can't remember which city, we'd gone into a little shop, and Alexander.
Spain?
No, I think it was like a smaller town. Anyway, it's not important. We'd gone into a supermarket, and Alexander had found this little character pot of bubbles.
yeah, Daddy gonna buy some bubbles
And
for you.
it was a Spider-Man picture with a green lid, and Jack had bought it for him, and he loved it. He had great enjoyment out of this little pot of bubbles, and then of course it got used up, and that was the end of it. Anyway, we were in the supermarket the other day, and he could choose from a whole lot of, and he had to choose.
Whoopsie.
He had to choose the same one, the one.
Yeah,
the
he chose
same
exactly the
character.
same Spider-Man
Yeah.
character, the same color lid,
Yeah.
and everything. It was identical to the one that we.
Yeah.
It was identical to the one that we
Yeah.
chose.
Anyway, that was an endearing moment for us because obviously for him that was.
Yeah. Well, we asked him. What did you ask him? The color of the van the other day?
Well, we were reminiscing. Deb and I realized that obviously he's on this journey too, and
Buy some.
it's good to
Yeah.
reminisce. And we were
Better go
reminiscing
get you
about
some.
the van, and I asked him what the color of the van was, and he was
the
very
camera.
clear that it was yellow. It's just it's good to hear him talk fondly about various times. Deb's just going to go and get the bubbles, and just let me alone with the camera. So today we're meeting up with some fellow flat earthers or truthers, or whatever you want to label us as, people. We're meeting up with a couple today who helped with organizing the accommodation we're in, so they live locally. So that's going to be good. It's going to be good to connect with some others. That we're going to go and see a horse and have some conversation, hopefully, and some sharing. So that's going to be, that's good. It's exciting for us to have that opportunity. And now we're bubble blowing.
Turn the camera around, you can see what Alexander does with the bubbles.
Oh, it hasn't quite worked.
So slow.
Oh, okay. We love the bubbles.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, so we got to keep an open mind. But I noticed Nicholas say he's a Luciferian, because Lucifer is the light bringer, and I know that the Freemasons say that too. That's their thing. Lucifer is the sort of he's cool. He's the bringer of light and so on. And we do live in a world of misinformation and disinformation, and who can be sure exactly what's true?
We watched the Quantum of Conscience video the other day, and he was talking about being on the train, and he mentioned about 7 or 8 different areas of uncovering the truth, and if people were thinking the same, then we were clearly on the same train. But it's more about just having the stuff on the table as possibilities, because the reality is we don't know. We can only feel our way through this and use our intuition and our intelligence to figure it out.
Yeah, because some people say dark Satan and all of that stuff is just what's within man. There's a bubble there. What's within man is all that darkness and light. It stayed on the carpet.
Some believe that actually we're projecting that light and dark. It's us that actually are. It's a manifestation of what we have within us.
Yeah.
We can save this, or we can allow it to.
So before you joined the stream, Nicholas, I did mention that you also thought maybe there's something in this idea. You might have to go back to the beginning of the stream. Daddy blowing more some bubbles. There's a little one. Look here. Can you see it? Right here by my finger.
I can't find it.
Don't worry, there's some more for you to find. I started to wonder whether this the 8 inches per mile squared wasn't an overcomplication, and actually it was simply a case of, if you're going to travel 6,000 miles from the North Pole to the equator, you were going to have to descend 4,000 miles, and you would descend equally with each step a small amount, and that amount is actually 0.6 of a mile per mile out, or per mile around, when you do the maths. So it's almost like for every mile you travel along the skin of the surface, the skin of the surface of the Earth, you have to dip down 1 kilometer, and it doesn't get steeper the further you go. It may appear steeper to the originating position, but if you think about a craft isn't. If you're flying from England to South Africa, the craft isn't going to sort of initially go only a little bit down, a little bit down, a little bit down. But as it gets closer to Africa, it's gonna have to dip its nose down even steeper, as the formula would suggest. The 8 inches per mile suggests, because as I said, at 99 miles, you're having to, for the 100th mile, you're having to descend like 130 feet. First mile only in 8 inches.
The bubbles are like the colours of the rainbow.
That no longer makes sense to me, friends. And I am, suggesting if you can think about it and and apply your own thinking to it, and don't get caught in the trap of, oh well, we were told it was 8 inches per mile squared, and we're going to just believe that. Because I've just pretty much taken that at face value. I've never really thought about it too much on my own, and I think that's one of the traps built into the system is that it gives you the Eric DeBays and the Mark Sargents and all these high profile guys, and I'm not knocking on them at all. I've met Mark, so I'm not casting aspersions on him, but the system has offered us these high profile characters, and they do a lot of the thinking for us. So
well, it's about us. We do still hand some of our authority over, and this is where it comes back to knowing thyself. Because I reckon eventually we'll probably be able to have a fairly good inner understanding of these things.
So, because if you reduce it to a football and you just say, well, this balloon, and you just say, well, look, it's not going to get steeper. It's always going to be the same amount of descent. As I travel, it's going to be the same amount of drop. It doesn't get exponentially more. Which is why a lot of people would say, oh well, it's only 8 inches, not per mile squared, just 8 inches per mile, because it can't be getting steeper and steeper. And I kind of get that now. I kind of understand why they would say that, but. Of course, if it was only 8 inches, you'd be living on a very, very small ball. So the simple math is that if you travel a quarter of the distance of the ball, then you've got to allow for the count for the radius for that quarter, and then the radius for the next quarter, and the radius for the next quarter, and so on and so on. So as well as traveling 25,000 miles to go around the ball, you would have to descend and ascend a total of 16,000 miles. That's what I think, and that means that it's 0.6 of a mile for every mile traveled. It's 0.6 of a mile down, and why that matters is because then no one could say that across a lake at 1 mile or 10 miles, at 10 miles you would have 6 miles of drop. Which is a phenomenal amount, and no one could buy that. No one could accept that. But 8 inches, people, 8 inches is hard to be sure. Maybe we're losing a bit of the ship. Maybe you're making an A. So that's my kind of.
It's your Saturday musings.
That's my Saturday musings, guys, and I'll probably leave it at that for now, I think. And is there anything?
No, I was just telling them today we're meeting up with some
fellow flatties.
And we're gonna share some conversation, we're looking forward to that, aren't we?
Well, I was saying to Andrew, we're building up a little bit of a network of friends, around the place, because. I don't know. I mean, maybe this year is such a cataclysmic year, and so on and so on and so on. And in a year's time, none of this will matter. But it could be that in 10 years' time, we're still trying to spread light. Trying to.
I don't feel like it's a cataclysmic year. I think that there's going to be some shifts, significant shifts. How and what those are going to be, I don't know. I take leadership from Dave in terms of, it's about building the ark and strengthening our perseverance and courage and all those qualities that we need to have, and putting down the fear wherever possible.
No fear.
And trying to live as high vibrational as possible. And I only do that if I face my fears, because they're part of the programming for me. So I think you remain present in that experience, and then whatever comes will come. But yeah, I don't think it's, maybe I don't want to think of it in the fear sort of way. So I believe that it's not going to be like that. But whatever comes, whatever is to unfold, this is where trust and faith comes in, and that's where we're kind of that's where we're sitting with in our minds. Yeah.
A's. Alexander will make alphabetic shapes with pretty much anything: sticks, stones, food, blueberries, blocks. He's using blocks now.
He's using blocks, yes.
Yes, he's correcting me now. He's using blocks.
Yeah.
And even we were kicking the football around yesterday afternoon in the back here, and he starts seeing in the way that the ball travels through the air, and he's like, "That's an A," as it goes up and down. And
well, I've been wondering, obviously that they talk about alphabet and words being spellcraft, or like Dave said, cursive, curse. But actually, there's the intention behind the word or the letters, and whether he is enjoying them because of their energetic experience, because he just loves numbers and the alphabet, and it's where his interest lies. So we're kind of encouraging that and just seeing where it goes for him.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just loves letters.
Yeah.
And we know the sound of letters definitely has its own energetic resonance. So
yeah. But is it possible, like Mark M was saying, that we're going to see more and more more strange things in the sky? Then maybe numbers. But whatever it is, it's about preparing the ark, for any whatever's coming.
And actually, this will go back to the masculine and feminine energies, in that we need to honor each of those essences, because we need men to lead and
women to nurture.
Act, and women to nurture and feel. Those two things. Those two essences, although we have them within ourselves, and those need to be integrated, absolutely. And, there needs to be the yin and the yang within you. Equally, the role of the man to lead and act, and the woman to feel and be intuitive. They're important roles, and we need to honor and uplift those. Females amongst females and males amongst males. And that's part of this as well, the individual transformation, but equally that of the masculine and the feminine. So
which reminds me, just quickly as an aside, I don't know if you ever saw the interview that coming from the first British Flat Earth Conference, Martin Kenny and Gary John and I should remember his name. It's been a while since we spoke. There was a third guy. The three of them went on a UK Good Morning.
I can picture his face, I just don't know his name.
Yeah, the three of them went on a breakfast TV show with a guy called Philip Schofield, and that little interview has had over 5 million views on YouTube. Turns out that guy is gay. He came out yesterday as gay. One married man with 2 children and so on. Yeah, made a 1. Why is that important or relevant? It's like this guy has been, a major kind of influencer of the UK society. Very important kind of guy.
Well, it's in most people's daily lives
Yeah.
because they will watch him on Good Morning Britain.
One of the most famous
I'm not sure. Can't remember.
In this country. And I think that it, you know, the meddling with the human psyche and the divine masculine and the divine feminine has been very much part of the agenda. And we know that the Vatican is riven with homosexuality, and they, you know, I actually hung out with, you know, partied with two ex-Roman Catholic vicars who had spent 4 years working in the Vatican, and they said it's just they were gay themselves, but they too.
I think you need to just clarify that this is not you being.
No, of course not. I don't. I mean, if you know me and you've heard me speak before, you know that I don't. It's, you know, what someone's sexuality is. You know, if someone is gay or transgender or whatever, that's not for me to. I have no judgment to make on that. My judgment is on a society that encourages people to sit in front of a TV, eat shit food, you know, and go along certain paths that are detrimental to their own enlightenment or their own upliftment, you know?
Yeah, one could see that actually that's part of their journey, their soul journey in this time on this earth. So
you could do, but I mean, if we took Alexander and sort of ideated him in a particular way, let's just take violence. Let's say we gave him a lot of violent imagery and stuff like that. That would be very wrong. And, you know, we could say, oh, well, that was his path to become a violent criminal, for example. No, I don't accept that. Personally, I don't accept that. What's my baby? And I think that's my issue is not with someone being gay. My issue is with a society that is pussifying men. Oh, it's gone soft because it was near the fire. Can I blow another one for you? You know, it's the diminishment of the divine masculine, the diminution of the divine feminine that sees women becoming lesbian kind of,
men haters.
Men haters, or they want to be like men. They want to dress like men. They want to, do the crew cut and all of that kind of stuff. You know, again, I've got friends like that. It's not like I'm saying, oh, you know, I don't want to be your friend, or I don't care for you because you've gone like that. I had a relationship with a girl in America who became lesbian. My first girlfriend became lesbian. Blow bubbles.
It's a bit like baldness. It's not. I know that obviously, being of a, you know, being a gay or comes with its emotional. Although actually, we've got a friend who was going bald who it deeply affected him, and he even went for transplant, spend money on transplantation. The reason I bring that up is obviously Dave and I believe that the bald, genetically bald is more about a change. There's been a change in our makeup through parasites
chemicals
chemicals. It's certainly environmental. I mean, I follow a doctor in America who's taken her partner from being bald to his hair growing purely by doing a parasitic cleanse.
So if I was to put chemicals in your water that affected, let's just say I put hormones in the water that made men become like women, grow boobs or whatever, would that be acceptable? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You know, my hair stands on the back of my neck. I get really annoyed with that being that's just what was intended. No, it wasn't what was intended. And this is exactly what we should be standing up against, you know. So it's not to say that, because someone was, you know, had a birth defect because their mother had thalidomide or whatever, is not to kind of have a go at that child or that mother. I'm not having a go at that. I'm having a go at the system that would allow for that kind of toxification of the natural way of things. and
and
we have to acknowledge that baldness is rife, blindness, so people wearing glasses is rife. This is not nature, and so too with homosexuality and people's confusion about
even
the gender roles and so
look
on.
at
This is not nature.
ovarian cancer. Now you can go and be tested, and they can tell you your percentage probability of getting that same cancer, and then have parts of your body removed to prevent cancer. Now, again, I'm not saying that's wrong. For the people who are living it, I'm just saying that obviously there is a change in the energy vibration of our meat suits over generations that is bringing about these changes in society. They say that your grandmother was carrying you as an egg, and whatever she was experiencing on a vibrational level, you will have within you. Someone the other day was expressing that actually when she is interacting with her children and she gets angry, she can feel the energy of that anger. She can feel, sorry, Alexander's had enough of us talking, so we're going to have to go soon, but that she can feel the energy of that that experience through what she believes is her mother's anger. So it's a fascinating thing. And
yeah, no, it's not. You see, it's like, it's again, the guy who ends up being a bully because he was bullied by his parents who were traumatized by a system is not really the issue. It's so much as it's the system that is creating that kind of that shadow. The system is creating the cancers
over generations,
and so it's not really to point at the fat person and say, "Oh, you're the problem because you've overeaten." It's not that. That's not how my heart works. My mind is like, this person is like that because of environmental factors that are not natural.
Anyway, on that note,
what was Mark saying there? There was a comment. Can you read that? I can't see it.
Yeah. Oops. It says, if you're bald in the front, you're a thinker. If you're bald in the back, you're a lover. If you're bald in the front and you're bald in the back, you think you're the... Sorry, it just went. I'm not very proficient in this. If you're bald in the back and the front, you think you're a lover. That's very good. I agree. Philip Schofield coming out was staged for a reason, and he has a lot of influence. And I'm a gay man, and could see. Sorry. Could see he was all along. Don't like duplicates. People like him. Wow, they're telling about.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's nothing wrong with, and I worked in a gay bar, I back in 94, 95, 94, so it's not like I'm homophobic or anything like that. It's not about that. It's about us having good information. It's about us nurturing our young in the natural way and bringing out the natural talents and the natural divine masculine and feminine within us each.
And that comes down to what we actually are. We're these amazing beings that actually potentially we're very powerful, and if we're the real raw product without the stress and environmental toxicity, then what are we capable of?
Yeah. Because I went to war and killed people, by the way, based on disinformation and propaganda and lies and what have you, and that was wrong. And my soul has to pay a price for that. But so we're all in this soup together, and we've all been affected in myriad ways. This is, so there's no like, oh, better than anybody else and unaffected. We've all been affected. We've all been affected, my friends. And, it is only with love that this information is given, and with the ideal that, in time because, I used to be, if you asked me 5-6 years ago, I used to make all the arguments for homosexuality. There's 200 species of animals that display homosexual tendencies. It's absolutely natural. I was sort of encouraging it. So that was where I was at. And then I realized, no, but this is actually not the natural order of things. And the reason we're in this malaise is because we've been given so much toxin in our environment, whether it be through propaganda, food, any other sorts of things. So that's all it's about, and I want the system to quit all of that. So that's my thesis.
Well, I think it's not about the system quitting all of that, because the system's not going away. It's about us. It's about us seeing that veil, and then deciding or doing that work on detaching from it, or healing from it, or accepting it. I'm talking about your own personal acceptance. I'm not talking about anything else. And through that you're able to be as authentic as you can be. Be that ark, be that Noah. The
balance of the divine.
Yeah.
The masculine and the feminine within each of us is what we should be striving for. And I myself have had to take back some of my masculinity, some of that I'd kind of given away over the years, become subjugated by this over feminized world, softened world, and so on. And part of working with my hands again, and coming home with blisters and how many times it'd be like my hands are just riddled with bits of wood and like splinters and stuff like that. It'd be like, yeah, this is me being a man, and
well, it's also taking back the leadership, because hands up, because I come from I spoke about yesterday about a experience of trauma when I was younger, and not any major trauma, just some very passive underlying trauma, that I learned behaviors that meant that I could control the environment around me so that I felt secure. It never makes you feel secure because it's not real, it's not authentic. And part of that was to manipulate those around me or to try and get them to love me or accept me. It's kind of a dance that you end up doing, and part of that is to be one thing's a certain way because that way I feel like everything's going to be okay. And so in relationships, I tend to choose men who I could control. And Dave and I did that dance with each other, and you do see it a lot in relationship, which is why you see the men sort of tending to be, not all, because obviously there is different relationships, but where men are kind of pussified because the women need to feel like they have some sort of control, and this is what happened with Dave and I, and there has had to be a shift where Dave needs to lead. I want him to lead.
Sometimes.
Yeah, the need to control still is there.
And I see it in the supermarket.
It's dissolving.
I see it in the supermarket. You see these guys pushing the trolley for their wife and meekly, picking up the item and selecting, and this is, I mean, we should be out in the wild selecting the next animal to hunt, or the next way of generating the food stuff for our family. Anyway,
I think part of the system has broken down that warrior within, and again, everybody has a warrior, female and male. We just have different essences of that, and that's another thing that it reminds me of when I was at school, teaching in schools, and the resilience and perseverance of most children isn't there anymore, because we're not out there climbing trees and getting our legs scratched. We're bubble wrap our children, and health and safety, everything, because we're not out there, in nature, experiencing things, yes, making a few mistakes, and then having to realize that, oh no, that's going to cause me to scratch my leg, or I need to be careful. But anyway, the point is that the resilience, or the ability to fail and then pick yourself up is kind of being what it is. It's lost in children, and if it's lost in children, it's lost in adults. So it's about rediscovering that, knowing thyself, getting that stuff back, and realigning the masculine and feminine is definitely part of that.
Yeah. So thanks very much for saying. I assume Mark's talking about me being very, very patient and gracious. Thank you. If that was for me. Jack says, "What's with all the thumbs down?" Someone, was it you, Jack? Someone said there was like 30 thumbs down on something, and my thumbs up and thumbs down have been going all over the place at the moment. And my view count the other day was, no, I'm not here for the view count. Although obviously I do want to, I do feel like we want to grow what we're doing, but this YouTube is definitely fiddling with it. Someone has suggested that since I called out Simon Dan, who has gone very quiet on me, that has gotten worse. I don't know, and I'm not going to, I don't want to kind of exhaust myself with that, but I have to say, Jackson, I must be kind of over the target a bit if I'm deemed worthy of meddling with my thumbs up and down.
Although, to be fair, when Alexander's watching a domino video, there's people that give thumbs down to that too. So yeah. I think it's just, I think when we're sitting behind a computer and a keyboard, we're braver.
But the thing is, it's a percentage game, really. You expect to see about 10% thumbs up, between 5 and 20% thumbs up, depending on how good the video is, I suppose, and a few percentage points on the thumbs down. If I was being really unkind or nasty, I would expect for the thumbs up to maybe overtake the thumbs down to overtake the thumbs up. But
although in real life, not everybody likes what we've got to say. So
no, I know
that's kind of maybe a realistic portray of what the subject that we're talking about. Not everybody's going to agree with us.
My friend Drew's in the room, so that's nice to see Drew, and hope you're good with the wood, my friend. Hey, it's Red Eye. Hello, my friend. How are you? I was thinking about you yesterday, actually. Hope you're well. So this has become quite an interesting conversation, I think, around the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and it is about having a balance in us. We're not to be. See, why I'm not drawn to a guy like Dell is because he's all about the chest thumping. I'm such a bloke and I can go around and bash, people around the head with what I think and so on, and I can just cuss and be as he is. That doesn't appeal to me at all. Equally, I'm not going to be drawn to a man who's a complete pussy. It is about having. That's probably not the right word. Mommy will sort you out with some chain. Equally, it's about having a balance, both in the feminine and masculine camps, and the ladies are meant to be more feminine with a feminine dominant with a bit of masculine naturally, and equally the men are meant to be masculine dominant with a bit of feminine, and you know how that presents for you is an individual thing. I don't know that there's any one size fits all necessarily, but I know the kind of people that I'm drawn to is those people who have, you know, they understand their masculine thing and have a balance with the feminine. You know, we can't go, you know, bare knuckles through this world. That's just not the way it's going to work. Equally, we can't just allow this sort of over feminized, you know, office worker mentality to be how we characterize ourselves. I don't think that that's natural, and so, you know, perhaps we'll continue to unpick this more in the weeks ahead. It's the weekend now. I don't have any work to do. I've got a coat of an undercoat on that door. I'm going to do a few more doors over the coming weeks. So I'll show you some of those. Some of the stuff about this house that we're staying at, this place we're staying at, is fantastic. And you know, there's so much after fact remodeling, and as I've said before, the floor levels are all over the place. I mean, there has to be, I'm not joking, there's only 3 or 4 stories in this property, but there has to be no less than 15, maybe 20 different sub-levels of things, you know, half level here, 3 foot above this foot level is another level, and then, you know, there's 2 staircases that lead to nowhere. You know, it's just a hodgepodge of poor construction that it belies the truth about how fantastic these builders were, the people who originally built this place. And as I said, I will do a video, like I'll put together a whole bunch of clips and make it into a little presentation video, and I'll do it at the end of the time that we're here, just because it, you know, I don't want for these people to get a phone call to say, oh, you know, who's staying with you, because they might not, you know, they might not appreciate some of the things I say, even though everything I say, I say it all with love. And even though I don't necessarily subscribe to their Sunday school version of religion, I still believe in the same. Well, I still believe in a Most High Creator. I still know that there's a Most High Creator that we're all essence of, we're all a part of. I think these guys would prefer the idea that Christ was a single individual, and there's a second Christ or a second coming of that Christ to come. You know, and we can sort of abdicate responsibility to that second coming, rather than taking responsibility for ourselves. And I think this is part of our story, is to take responsibility for ourselves, become anarchists, responsibility for self, raise the light in the self, become the light being, maybe become a floater, so that when if an event occurs, then you can float above it, rather than getting caught up in the you know, the undercurrents and drawn into the dark, into the deep. So I hope that's you, my friends. I don't know if there's any last comments. That's another comment. Smoke weed, very good. I haven't smoked for a few days now, actually. Dale is a sweetie deep down. You can tell how he is with his wife and son. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. I might have told you the story before, Mark, but when I lived in Cape Town, I arrived in Cape Town with no money back in '93, and I'd been offered a job that fell through, doing marketing for a newspaper. It came to nothing, but it was a Saturday night. I had 5 rand, the equivalent of 50 pence or less, maybe 25 pence, and into my name in my pocket, and the offer of 1 month's accommodation with a girl I dated years before. She was a national aerobics champion, and when I was in the gym business, I'd had a brief affair, fling with her. Anyway, so she'd offered me a place to stay, and taken me out clubbing that Saturday night, and I was, in very good condition, physically in very good condition, when I was 25 or 24 or whatever, and the head, she was friends with this head bouncer, and just cut a long story short, I got offered a job as a bouncer at this nightclub. So, well, it was a bar stroke nightclub, and so the point of the story is that I then spend the next year and a half working the first 9 months of that year and a half working in the roughest pub, it turns out, in Cape Town. And I was in scraps most nights of the week, and became friends with some of the darkest people in the city. People carrying guns all the time on them, because carrying guns in South Africa was ubiquitous. And this one guy, his name is Hein Mitrovic, was one of the most well-known thugs in the city, and he even turned on me one night. I had to lock myself in a cage to protect myself from this guy, because he was he, for some reason, I don't know if his girlfriend had said something about me, but he wanted to rip my head off. Anyway, the point is that he, in the right situation with his girlfriend, with his mom or whatever, he was like the softest cat you could imagine, and respectful and so on and so forth. But in the wrong situation, he was an absolute nightmare. And when the police one time came to arrest him, they came with about 24, I'm not joking, 25 or something police turned up, because they knew what a violent cat this guy was, and they locked him up in the police van. And as the van is going down the street away from us, so you can hear the pounding on the back of this van, and as he's kicking out the grill on the back door, and before he was 300 meters up the road, the grill drops out of the back of the police van, and out he jumps. He was heavy on steroids. I'm not suggesting Dell still uses steroids, but I suspect he may well have done at some point. And this really does fuck with your mind, and can turn you into a really, angry beast. And I think sometimes, the psychology of psychopathy is that you can be messed up by your childhood, by your environment, and inside each of us is a loving being. But there is this beast that can be brought out. And I'm just not particularly drawn to people like that, I have to be honest. Because there is that kind of like darkness that I'm not drawn to. That's my story on that. We have made it this far, Jax. As soon as I can locate some solids, I'll get some meds to you today. Thanks, mate. Yeah, it's a funny old time, actually, because I can't really ask anyone here where I am here in Norfolk. Well, I don't have the money, to be honest with you. I haven't spent money on weed. I'm very grateful to a friend who I shan't name now in Canterbury, who has given me some weed in the last month or so, and that's the only weed that I've had to smoke. Because I can't afford to buy it, and I don't know anyone around here anyway where I'm at, and I don't want to ask these guys. They're all I think there are, a lot of people in the world are still in that kind of like cannabis is a bad drug. Even in the truth movement, there are people who go, "Oh, you shouldn't be on the weed." Well, I don't drink alcohol because I know it's bad for me, and I know that I can't smoke weed all the time. But there's certain weed that's so tampered with. I think that it's too strong for me. To it does cause me to feel like certain strange feelings that I don't find very pleasant. But equally, my mind is so, my mind works at like a warp speed, and it's nice to be able to kind of control it. And when I wrote my book, I wrote it in 3 2-month stages, and in 2 of those 3-month stages, I was smoking. In one of the 2-month stages, I was on a break, and I was an interesting experiment for me, and I felt like I was more creative in the smoking phases than I was in the non-smoking phases. So. But even if it is a little bit, like, I smoke it too much or whatever, I'm of the view that, we're not here to be Puritan. We're here to have, like a bit of a good time, So the idea that I've got to cut all pleasantries out of my life, all enjoyment out of my life, doesn't make any sense. We might go off the coffee for a while, but, because it's good for us, we'll go off the meat for a few months, as we did earlier, about a year ago. We spent about 3 months, 4 months, sort of vegetarian. I don't want to even use the term, but where we took no meat.
Well, I mean, and even now, we're kind of more eating as we feel, and that just happens to be.
Yeah, we're not
meatless.
eating meat at the moment.
I made a yummy pie last night.
Oh, the mushrooms! Mushrooms are awesome when it comes to that. Also, the aubergine one.
Yeah.
Eggplant is. Some chocolate treat.
Yeah, Mummy's got chocolate treat.
So it is about feeling what feels right for you and what works for you. Yeah. Anyway, guys, I've yabbled on for long enough. I hope this has been useful for you. And when it comes to Dell, I still think that I could, hang out with Dell, but I would prefer to meet him face to face, because there is something you can tell about. That's why I wanted to meet Simon and Dan. I don't want to, some of his. That's why I know some of his cowboy friends have seen my invitation, because they started writing on my wall, on my thing. And one invited me, come into the Discord and I'll debate you. And I don't want to do doing this online, because people online are far more kind of like the rules of engagement are different. People behave differently online than they do face to face. In the street activism, generally the people who've said the nastiest stuff have been people who've been to drive by, boom, 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 you're a fucking retard, and off they go. They won't be people men who will stand in your and toe to toe with you and go. They tend to be more respectful when they're standing face to face with each other.
We're not natural born fighters, are we? We're actually lovers.
We are naturally born lovers. We've just been screwed up, into all these different things, and violence, and this sort of machismo, anger, and stuff like that is just one of those programs that's been seeded to us.
It's the duality as well. So it's about giving you the opportunity to grow. Through the darkness. So
yeah, I know. Because for me, I know that I think that Dell is on the same page in terms of we've been deceived and there's something we need to change. I just don't like his style. I don't like his approach, and as you can tell, my approach is to be less bombastic. I admire certain aspects of his ability to tell people just to fuck off, and stop being a twat. I do I do admire that, but that generally doesn't feel natural to me. I have told people that face to face, and of course, as I just shared with you, I was involved in extreme violence. Extreme violence. People went home in ambulances or went to hospital in ambulances during my time in 94, 95. It was extreme. I became an extremely violent person. In those moments when the key was turned. When I started in the job as a doorman, I thought, no, I'll never have to fight because I'll be able to talk people out of that. But actually, when you're in a situation where people have been drinking and they're coming at you with fists or whatever,
And guns.
and guns,
They were, in South Africa,
there were guns,
which is one of the biggest reasons we were like, we need to get out
yep,
of here because
yep, yep,
people are no longer fighting with their fists.
yep.
They were
I rugby tackled a guy who was going for his gun. And another time a gun went off right next to me. The shrapnel pinged onto my leg.
That was part of one of your doorman jobs was to take people's guns with them and put them in a safe.
Yeah.
And this was South Africa in 1994, 95,
Yeah.
and we can all have an argument or even a punch up with each other, and both of you can, or generally can stand up and walk away. But when it comes to a gun,
Yeah.
you're not. It's not a fair.
Yeah, and the truth is that the tendons on my right hand don't work right anymore because I battered my knuckles so much that even now, 25 years later, the knuckle is misshapen. The main knuckle on my fist is misshapen.
I think that what's important about this as well is that this just shows that Dave, he has been to the dark.
Yeah.
He has.
Yeah.
He has been to Sodom and Gomorrah.
I danced with the dark.
Yeah. And this has been a journey back to himself and to who he really is, because and you have to go through the book writing and the facing his army stuff, because I think when you go into fight survival mode, which he did when he was in the army, and then you kind of lock that in and don't talk about it afterwards, because of course afterwards he didn't want to talk about it again. There's that anger that even hurt, because he's had to harm, because Dave was the kid that didn't hurt an ant.
Yeah, I didn't want to hurt an ant.
And he was expected to go and fight in a war at a very young age, which is why his mother said, I said goodbye to my son, and he never came back. Fortunately, he did come back just before she passed away, but it changed him. And Dave had that locked in him. And I think when he addressed the army stuff, when he became a government spy, then he was able to release that anger and that pain. And this is why in doing that internal work, it's actually being vulnerable is being strong, and that's another one of those things that we're taught. When you cry and you're vulnerable, then that makes you weak. From my experience, from what Dave and I have been through, actually our vulnerability has made us stronger, and it's not to be feared. It's tough to go through it, but it's not to be feared. So all that post-army stuff that he did was just, it was the beast, it was the darkness that was there in Dave, that he was filtering through his life.
But also, I think, because I didn't really want to get back, I didn't want to be in this, I never wanted to be a number in the system. I knew that from a very young age. My parents had said, go and be a banker, you're so good with numbers and stuff like that, I never wanted to be a number in the system. I ended up being a number in the system, but I was trying to avoid that. I didn't want to go on to tertiary education after the war. I didn't see any point, and so I ended up working in a nightclub as partly as a consequence of that, and that stoked the violent dark side, and I got the opportunity to express that physically, and
it was the most violent club in the city. And in the 90s in South Africa, as I said to Andrea when we left for the UK, my life has become like the Wild West. There is I was at the time, she didn't know this, but at the time I was stashing a shotgun under my bed for a friend. um, Guns were popping off here and there, and I was getting closer and closer to the nexus of the darkest parts. In fact, a friend of mine whose dog bit my arm, security dog bit my arm, he was executed in a gangland execution about 10 years ago. So that's where people that I was hanging out with ended up, is getting into that dark.
This just points to one of the reasons we aren't in South Africa, and what South Africans. It's a beautiful place, and people are obviously living there. I'd like to say happily, but it's a fairly dark place, and you've got people who are wanting to fight with each other.
So I guess the point of all of this really is, because this all came from the conversation about Dell, is that what I feel like is that if we are to deprogram and not to fall into the grooves that have been laid, the traps that have been laid for us by this system, it is that we are never going to change it by going back to war. Sorry, there's my hand in the way. We're never going to change it by going back to war. And I've been to war, literally. And as I've just shared with you, it's the first time I've ever spoken in detail about my days as a doorman in Cape Town.
I met him then.
That's when Andrea met me. I got the pub that was so rough. I got fired from that for beating a policeman.
A corrupt policeman.
Okay. Yeah, and the story about how that kind of he deserved it. But that was why I lost my job there, and I ended up getting offered a job at a trendier bar in which I worked for 8 months, and I had 3 fights in that 8 months, and one of the fights there were guns involved, and ambulances were called as well. And that's another story for another day. But and that's why I don't buy into these police killing these guys with knives, because I've been around knives and I've been around guns, and it's not necessary to kill people like this. This is anyway. The point is more to do with, do I think that I need to return to violence and anger in order to kind of change the world? No, I don't. I think that I need to find love. And I think that if we are to resonate with the wider world, with the population of the general world, then we're going to do that through love and through
honor, respect.
Yeah, and
those 7 virtues. Those 7 virtues.
The virtues.
Kindness.
Yeah. Are we going to be able to stand at Downing Street or Washington's, whatever it's called, where the White House is? Are we going to be able to do that? Were you guys in Canberra, the Aussies? Are we going to go be able to petition our politicians and ask them to make changes? No, we're not. They're not going to do it like that. And whether you stand there, like before the Iraq War, the second Iraq War, 500,000 or 1 million people are said to have marched on Whitehall in London and demanded that the Britons not go to war. Well, of course they went to war on the lie of Saddam Hussein's got weapons of mass destruction in 45 minutes. The weapons of mass destruction, and so are they going to hear us when we're bombastic? And this is the important part: are the divine feminine going to be drawn into the conversation if we're going, hey, you fucking cunt, you, la la la, which, by the way, Dell has called me a cunt. Me and Russian vids in a comment. I see what you cunts are doing, right? Is that going to bring? Is that godlike? Is that Christ-like? Is that higher vibration-like? Not at all. Not at all.
So that's why I'm not drawn to Dell as he is. Inside of him is, yes, the sweetest, softest, kindest man, and who loves his children and his wife, and is possibly as tender as can be, with them. But that's not what we see. Have I got inside of me the most violent, darkest kind of person? Yes, I have that. But that's not what's going to win this a challenge, or this mission.
Well, it's also
that
about you
is that dark.
facing your own darkness and getting that balance right, and then hopefully from there you can filter the world differently.
You see that? That's it.
Yeah.
That's
we
it.
have to face our own darkness. And shit, that's hard.
And I've had to face that, and this morning's opportunity it's come out of the blue to purge some of that, and share some of that part of my story, which it's not that I haven't wanted to share it, just the opportunity to kind of talk about some of that stuff hadn't really
There's sometimes an element of shame, isn't there, when we have to talk about how we were.
Yeah, well, we've all done
facing
things
our
that we're
own
not proud
darkness,
of in our
course.
lives, and
Well, again, it's duality. It's that contrast, opportunity.
and the thing is, though, but it's that we are, just like we were talking about homosexuality earlier on, it's just like we are, all of us, in a soup in which these aspects of our character have been prompted, or have been given predominance. So, as I often say about, put 10 dogs in a cage, give them 5 dogs worth of food. Not long time, they'll be eating at each other. They'll be fighting and killing each other for the food because there isn't enough. And so, you create a situation in which MK Ultra, mind control, Victorian strictures, hardships. How many children got beaten because, say, for example, they spilled a cup of milk and their parents could barely afford to replace the cup of milk. So out of their anguish of, how much money that cost me, how much work I'm going to have to do to replace the broken pane of glass or whatever. And so the kid gets beaten, and then that kid then beats his child. And so the cycle of violence and scarcity-based mind control and fuckery continues. Well, this is all, a lot of what we're all in is that, we've been put in, like I was, in a situation where with people coming at you with guns, knives, and fists. And what do? You draw first. You get to a point where you're like, I can feel the guns about to come out. I'm going to knock this guy down before he can get his gun out. That's what it became like for me.
But we do agree, don't we, on this, that actually you need the dark to be able to grow. So it's like we talk about our 2 older kids who they've gone through the system. We have parented them a certain way, and they're now out there at university having to make choices themselves, and some of them are things that we know are a dark path or a dark experience, but we believe, right, that they have to experience that. They have to experience it so they have the contrast to choose. And there's a beautiful example of this, actually, is my daughter, in her later teens, came to alcohol, and she has well and truly experienced it, to points where she put herself in danger. And Dave has been saying, it's not good for you, it's not good for you, it's not good for you. But at the same time, you have got to learn to make the choice. Well, she's now in her 3rd year, and things have sort of settled down a little bit. She's gone through that, and actually she's realized that alcohol makes her anxious. Alcohol makes her feel down the next few days after, and is now making the conscious choice to drink less. She's not at the point in her life where she's saying, I'm not going to go out and have a party and not have a drink of alcohol, but equally she's making the choices to not participate. But she had to experience that and make that realization, that have that inner knowing. It's a bit like with the flat earth. People always say, don't believe me, go and do your own research. Well, it's the same thing. You have to go and do your own research when it comes to your own path of light and dark, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
And then be able to know what is the right choice. And for me, you feel it in your body. When it's the wrong choice, I always used to say to the kids, when you're in a situation and you get funny feeling in your stomach, you know that you need to question that situation. It's the same thing now. For me, this is why you've got to know yourself and you've got to take away some of that program and patterning. But actually, when you know yourself, you can then know this is right, this is wrong, this is dark, this is light.
Yeah. And we all need to do that. But if, people are drawn to dark leadership or whatever, then that's the path that they're on. It's, but for me anyway, I mean, I've tried to avoid some of the kind of darker elements of this, and I think that I'm meant to be, heading towards light, love, or whatever, and spreading that, and trying to connect to people who want the same thing. There's others who want other things. That's absolutely fine. There isn't only one school of doing this, only one way of doing this. But that's my way. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and if it resonates with you, then give a thumbs up. If it doesn't, give a thumbs down. It's
well, or don't. Yeah, I mean, or don't watch. That's why I zone out. There's channels Dell or whatever,
exactly.
unsubscribed. Nathan Oakley, unsubscribed. Not interested in that energy. And that's not to disrespect them, but just to say that's not for me.
It's not a personal attack at all. It's just it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. If it doesn't feel right, then it's probably not.
Yeah.
And you can move along. But yeah, that we then think it's our opportunity to tell that person they're wrong and they're bad, or make a comment, make a really ugly comment, and really we could just say it doesn't resonate with me, I'm moving along. And equally there's others that do, where you can you can go and that could also change. That could change over time too.
Yeah, and I think we're all on a journey of that, and I think that we all have. I think we all want redemption. However, as Andrew was saying, there is a dark and a light element. And I think that there is, just like in the Harry Potter example, there is a dark team and a light team, both at the same school, both seeking the answers, both, wanting to achieve something. And as Harry Potter, I think I've never really watched them. I watched one or two of them, but not closely, and a long time ago. But I think, he knows he has to work with both the dark and the light, in order to get this. Anyway, I've offloaded a lot of emotional stuff here today, so that was pretty intense.
Well, I would probably say it's got to do with the energies that are around at the moment. So,
Foot Soldier says, "Hi. Anyway, maybe you should join the press group, Dave, so you can ask questions about the powers that be. Is the Earth a spinning globe or a lie?" I once tried to get a job before I knew about it. I once tried to get a job not like as a researcher on and I was obviously too old or too whatever, that I didn't get offered the job. But
it would be edited out.
It's nothing. I did
a narrative, and that narrative is if it's anything out of the.
Yeah, and I did a bit of free, unpaid journalism for a South African newspaper. This was mainly when I was doing the military stuff 6-7 years ago, and they asked me, or I offered to do an article on something to do with South Africa, and they made me edit it 3 times because it just didn't sound right for them, and this is exactly what you get, is that you have to fall in their line, otherwise you don't get you don't get your stuff published. I watched Dale just to see him tell ballheads to fuck off. Yeah, I mean, there's an element of car crash TV there that is I understand that, but that's like a never-ending saga, really, isn't it? That's why I partly why I left sort of the Facebook groups and so on, because, or Facebook generally, but because, you know, I realized that, you know, like the Dawn of the Dead movies, where, you know, there's a never-ending stream of people who will, you know, this is 2015, 2016, you know, and I'm just seeing, wow, we're not changing the world overnight, and people are not seeing this. And even if I don't know if there are any people who were arguing in 2016 and saying you guys are retards for thinking you live on a flat thing, have any of them even converted their thinking to you know, I'm not on a globe? I don't know, because I've never heard one go, yeah, I used to be one of those people who was angrily telling you were retards.
Yeah.
I've never had one come to me and say that. Um, and that aside, I think that even if a few did convert their thinking, there are millions and millions and millions of people just waiting in their Dawn of the Dead graves to be scratched awake and say, look, someone's telling you that you don't live on a spinning ball and you're not a monkey from evolution. And they will kind of wake up, you retards, and they will spend months and months and months engaging you in conversations that you will never, because your intention is to kind of get them to think differently, but their intention is to tell you what a retard you are and how stupid you are, and so on, and they, that will never end. And the point is that just like you realize that certain practices you might be involved in might be toxic for you, well, what are you going to do? You're going to keep taking the vaccination even though you know that it's toxic? Well, for me, this is a toxin that that is going to restrain me from my own natural growth.
It reminds me, we watched, we'd gone over to dinner, and David seen a DVD that he thought might be interesting, and it was called The Titans, and the guy explained, and the word Mars came up. So David was like, oh, okay, we'll watch it. Well, we didn't watch very much of it because it
was horrible.
It was quite dark. It was very poor acting, but it was horrible. It certainly didn't make us feel very nice, and so we stopped watching it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you know, if it's not making you feel good.
So Foot Soldier asked a question, because he was saying about, you know, join the press and so on. Look, the press are never going to be allowed to tell us, the world, that it's flat. Martin Kenny said something that both of us enjoyed hearing him say, but, you know, if he's right, that's fantastic. And that is that this year the Vatican is going to tell the world that the earth is flat. Now, if that happens, they will do it in a way that leaves them still in control, and where people go, okay, just like, you know, NASA have told us that the moon is inside of Earth's atmosphere, but no one's saying, well, then how did that affect, you know, your trajectories and stuff like that? If, you know, the difference between atmosphere, even if it's thin, versus the vacuum of space, makes a difference in terms of all the telemetry. No one's interested in that, and they'll just carry on eating their popcorn and watching the Super Bowl. So, you know, is that a possibility? Yeah, but if so, it'll be done in such a way that people are so distracted with Donald Trump's non-impeachment or whatever that they won't pay any heed to it, and it won't mean the spiritual journey that it's meant to mean. So
well,
he asked,
that's what we predict. I mean, you know, we don't know. It might be one of these pivotal moments. But
yeah, okay. Well, it could be, and then if that's, you know, then it's a game changer, and all of us will going to be washed away in you know, like the gay guy I was talking about earlier on, Philip Schofield, will be the guy that everybody will be listening to. You tell us what to think next, you see, and none of even the, you know, the higher profile flat earthers will get subsumed by, you know, Oprah Winfrey and what was that? Anyway, it doesn't matter. You know, these high profile people, it'll be them that they're looking to and listening about what to think next about the revelations.
Anyway, if it does come to pass and it is revealed,
No,
those who
so
have the eyes to see and hear will see it. But
what I wanted to say to foot soldier, what I wanted to say to the foot soldier is that, because he asked me, then what's next? Well, okay, so if I had my own way, then yeah, people like me who are genuinely, sincerely trying to alert people to the true nature as much as we can discern it, we would be given the microphone at the BBC or the CNN or whatever, and the camera, and we would be allowed to talk about these things in this way, and to encourage humanity onto a different path. But
but the
it
thing
feels a little
is,
bit like, we're thinking in human scale. The timeline might be way off. So for me, like, this technology that we have is allowing us right now to talk to people in America and in Australia and across the plane, and there are people who have hundreds of thousands of followers, subscribers, whatever, who are able to hear what they're saying. And I think that this reach that we have is going to afford the small voices that are outside of the system to reach a greater number of people. But I'm also reminded that not all people need to know this, and that, as the Bible says, that even amongst the elect there will be people will be deceived. So, it's not, I don't know that we need to be, see, this fixation that I have perhaps on everybody knowing the truth is probably not necessary. It's not it's not in
but what
it's
does
not
that
it's not the
mean?
game.
What does that mean? Everybody knowing the truth, because actually knowing the truth doesn't mean anything unless there is then a
Doing the
next
soul
after
work.
the. Absolutely, you can know that there's all these veils, but until you do something with the detachment from those veils, as in your own soul journey, then you might as well know that the earth is a globe.
Yeah.
Because it's like
Yeah.
it's not just.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I think there's good work being done by those who are trying to plant seeds with people who need to, or they'd like to see the illusion that's going on. But it has to then mean something. There has to be meaning behind that. I mean, that's been part of our question when we've been in a difficult time. What does this all mean? Is it worth it? And it has to. And we always come back to that soul stuff.
Yeah.
So what's next? Well, perhaps there's truth being revealed all the time. People are just not seeing it. And then what? Then what do you do with that on a personal level, which then affects change?
Yeah, so I was thinking, because if Donald Trump came out tomorrow and said, by the way, we've lied, NASA was lying about the moon landings, and the Earth is not a globe, people would still be looking to him to offer their leadership, whereas the leadership should come from within you.
Yeah, taking our power back.
And the only way
Being sovereign beings.
we've started to take that sovereignty back and that anarchism mindset in a healthy way is by walking over the coals, as we have over these last few years.
Well, empowering ourselves, getting to know ourselves, getting back to that door that has been sanded back to its essence, to its wood, and then building up from there. But there's so many layers to that, and that part of that layer is the revelation of what's that what you see outside of you is not real.
Yeah. So maybe it's less about the fixation on how the world out there is going. Because I walk around the supermarket, as I did last night, and look at all these people and go, gosh, they're so deep in it. So, they're happy in their little lives. I shouldn't say little. They're happy in their lives, and you can't take those folks and go overnight. I mean, none of us went overnight from that to this. It has been an evolution of soul, and it continues to be an ongoing evolution of the soul. And I see Daryl here, Kill the Beast, is in the room, and I've seen, like, he's a great example, I think, of someone who's evolving his soul journey along this way, and it's lovely to see, Daryl. And I think this is the way that we do it, is individually within There can't be. I don't think it can be like you burst a balloon. You know, you take a balloon like this, and you release all the energy. It'll tear. It'll damage. You know, it's got to be a gradual process. Which is why you get such a visceral reaction from people when you say your entire reality, your Donald Trump, your globe, your ISS, all of this stuff is bullshit. It causes a visceral reaction, a strong, violent reaction, because it's too much too soon. So, you know, we need to continue, Foot Soldier, we need to continue doing our work. And I think that in time, then the right opportunity for the right people to get what they need to get, and for this story to alter will happen. You know, I mean, you know, the story of Jesus, and I'm not pounding, you know, whether or not he was real or not, but the story of him is a 3-year story. You know, from the age of 30 to 33, and he goes around the Sea of Galilee telling people that, you know, their world is being hoaxed on them, and then he goes out of the scene, and some people are affected by it, and others are not, and maybe
but remember, on that journey, although he might have done a lot of that work, he would have done a lot of time of stillness, a lot of time of
to get to that point.
Meditation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He would have had to, you know, face his darkness, in the desert when he was
in a cave.
Yeah. So it's for me, that's the really important part.
Yeah.
Just from a girly, divine feminine point of view.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was reminded that when you're in the thinking part, when you're in your head thinking, you're not actually in consciousness. I mean, we're obviously always in consciousness, but it's a state of being, isn't it? And when you're in thinking, then you're not connected to consciousness, and you need stillness, quiet, and perhaps nature, but stillness and quiet to be able to go back to that. So we have to go and get ready to meet our friends.
Oh yeah, we've got to go out now. And it's called a journey for a reason. Yeah. And we, you know, it is a journey, and it's not overnight. It's not without its.
Think of it from this point of view. If it was always revealed, and everybody realized the truth, and we were all doing the soul work, and it was all done and dusted, and we were living in the Garden of Eden, then what would be the point to this experience? Just to live in the Garden of Eden?
Yeah.
Well, I think firstly we're on a cyclical timeline, and it's not a timeline that we can even begin to understand. And you know, we're doing the work that we were sent here to do, I think, you know, in terms of the light and dark, and whatever you are called to do in terms of your heart intention, then that's what you should be doing. But yeah, we're definitely here to experience the light and the dark at this point anyway, you know, in this part of the cycle.
Yeah. And wasn't, you know, Jesus' female friend, was it Mary Magdalene? I think, sorry for my poor recollection there, but I think she was, you know, some people would disagree, but I think she was a hooker, a prostitute, you know. And so we all come from, I think the example there is great in that, the analogy is great in that, you know, we all come from a dark place, and we're meant to move, not meant to, the choice is to move from that dark place, that poisoned mind, body, and soul place, to this higher place. Step through that.
But we're also told to be afraid of the dark, so it's not something that we do willingly, because it's like, oh, that's scary. And I think the experience of, you know, being in a dark place can feel quite scary, but it's not something to be feared.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has been a long and winding stream. I hope it's been edifying for you. I thank you for stopping by.
Just by the
giving us
way,
your
this
attention.
is stuff that we're going through ourselves, so you're not alone. It helps to know that we're not alone either. So, which is why it's good to go and meet up with people in person, because that experience in person is invaluable. Which is why we're hoping in time to do hangouts so that we can actually talk to the people we're sharing with. They can give their input just not by typing, but actually in person or virtual person anyway.
Yeah, we're calling in a laptop.
Yeah,
If we
we're calling
can.
a laptop, but go and find some stillness. Go and connect to thyself.
Yeah, that's one of the traps of this YouTube. You know, I myself have caught up in the trap sometimes of being entertained by
Me too.
my research, and not spending enough time on stillness and inner reflection, inner love, and it is actually all about love. That's what it comes back to at the end of the day. And you know, while we're hating on any of the participants,
Including
whether it be
ourselves.
Simon and Dan,
Including ourselves. We also hate on ourselves because there's a lot of self-limiting talk that goes on inside our own minds. It's not just, I mean, often that's what we project outwards. But, you know, go and love on yourself. That's another thing we're told we shouldn't do. It's vain.
yeah.
But no, self-love is...
Because you see that little boy there, you know, the amount that I love him is so vast. But I remind myself when I love him on him that, you know, I have other children too, and he is just another one of us. And
And
know,
you are
my love,
ultimately that little boy too. You know, we all have
So-
that little boy, little girl, that inner child, adult relationship, and so we need to be kind to ourselves first and foremost, and then hopefully from that we can radiate out.
Yeah. So you know, when we're hating on Globers, we're hating on ourselves. When we're hating on, you know, when we're hating on all, and that's what this veil, this reality tries to give you is caricatures to hate. Whether it be that you hate Donald Trump or you hate Tony Blair or you hate whatever, you know.
Well, quite frankly, even hate yourself because for whatever reason you've done something that you're ashamed of or whatever. But it's about that. This is about facing it and accepting it and then loving yourself. You know. Anyway, it's very deep for a Saturday.
I'll tell you the story about this bell someday. I attached it to my darling mother's arm. But I'll tell you that story another day. But
anyway, we
much
hope you
love,
have a good
friends.
Saturday.
And,
I hope it's warm wherever you are.
Yeah, be well, and we'll speak to you soon.